Down there, life continues. The traffic is awful, stocks go on trading, and Star Trek is still showing.
effect. And also our subtopic is greenhouse effect. Now let's look at what we need to achieve by the end of this lesson. So our lesson objectives are as follows, right? At the end of the lesson, you should be able to firstly explain that the greenhouse effect is a natural phenomenon, right? It warms the atmosphere sufficiently to sustain life. Secondly, you should be able to explain that the greenhouse gases trap the ultraviolet radiation, which warms the air closest to the Earth's surface. Then, you should be able to list the common greenhouse gases as carbon dioxide, water vapor, and methane. And also, you need to be able to explain that an increase in greenhouse gases leads to global warming. Not only that, you need to be able to explain that global warming is an increase in the average temperatures of the atmosphere. And also, you need to be able to list and discuss the negative impacts of global warming. Then lastly, you need to be able to discuss ways of reducing global warming. And all this information is found under the CAPS document on page 82. Now, moving on, let's look at our pre-knowledge, right? What we need to have as foundation to today's lesson. So now in grade 4, if you remember, we discussed the topic of the earth and the sun, right? We discussed the topic of the earth and the sun. We said that the sun provides insulation, right, to the earth and provides what heat and light to the earth. And also in grade 9, we moved on and talked about what? The atmosphere and the layers of the atmosphere, right? We said that we have layers such as the troposphere, stratosphere, where you find the ozone layer, the mesosphere, thermosphere, and the outermost layer, which is not often discussed as what? As the exosphere. Right. Now let's look at this baseline activity, right? This baseline activity, it has two questions, but number one is a bit stretched, right? So I'm going to give you 4 minutes, but before that, let's go to the questions together. Number one is saying, give the name of the layer of the atmosphere the following characteristics refer to. A, contains the ozone layer. B, has the highest temperature. C, temperature decreases with altitude. Then number 2, you also have a picture to help you answer that, right? The question is saying, how does the density of the atmosphere change with altitude? So let's meet again after 4 minutes. Welcome back, grade 9s. I hope you had enough time to write down the answers, right? Let's look at the solutions. Firstly, let's reread the question so that we understand what we should have written or what we have written, right? Number 1, give the name of the layer of the atmosphere the following characteristics refer to. A, contains the ozone layer. B, has the highest temperature. C, the temperature decreases with altitude. Then number 2, how does the density of the atmosphere change with altitude? For number 2, you had to use the picture to help you answer, right? So let's look at the solutions. For number 1, right? Your A, it's what? The answer is stratosphere, right? That is the layer of the atmosphere called the stratosphere. And B is the thermosphere. Then C, it's 2 layers, right? It's the troposphere and the mesosphere. Then number 2, right? It decreases, right? We mean what? The density decreases because the higher you go, the less dense it becomes. So let's look at our picture so that we are able to see what we're talking about. So remember, in our previous lesson, we were talking about the density of the atmosphere. We said that in terms of the density of the atmosphere, the higher you go or the more you go up with altitude, the less dense it becomes. So starting from the first layer, which extends from 0 to 10 kilometers here, right? Which layer is that? That is the troposphere, right? So looking at the troposphere, this is where you find most of the gas particles in one place, right? These gas particles are compact or they are clustered together, right? So this is where it is mostly dense. But as soon as you move up a bit, right, the gas particles start to move far away from each other, making the atmosphere's air to be thinner and less dense, right? So I hope you still remember that. So now I want you to take 2 minutes to copy down the corrections quickly. Welcome back again, grade 9s. So now remember this, right? If you want to comment on this lesson, you want to send through your answers, we have our WhatsApp interactive number, which is 079 right? Don't hesitate to send those messages. Right. Now let's sail together with this ship, right? Now let's move on to our important terminology. The first term that we have there is greenhouse. What is this greenhouse we're talking about here, right? A greenhouse is a structure which is made up of gas in which plants are grown. We then have what? Greenhouse effect. And greenhouse effect is a warming effect caused by the trapping of energy in the atmosphere. Then we have greenhouse gases. Those are the gases that absorb the Earth's outgoing energy by trapping it in the atmosphere. Also, we have global warming, which is an increase in the average temperatures of the atmosphere. Then we have fossil fuels. And fossil fuels are coal, oil, and gas, which are made from the remains of plants and animals that lived a long time ago. We then also have what? Climate change. Climate change is the long-term changes in the Earth's temperature and precipitation patterns. We then have mass extinctions. Mass extinctions is the extinction of one or more species in a short period of time. We then have extinct. What do we mean when we say something is extinct, right? We mean that when a species dies out completely. So these are all the important terms that we're going to talk about that are involved in this lesson. So now, the main mean, greenhouse effect. Let's start by defining greenhouse effect, right? So now, first of all, we need to know that a greenhouse is a structure made up of gas in which plants are grown, right? This is a structure made up of gas and in which plants are grown. So as you move around their township or wherever, right, you sometimes see structures like this in agricultural places, right? So these structures are our greenhouses, right? They help to trap the heat inside so that the plants are what? They have enough or sustainable heat. Are we together? So it is a structure made up of gas in which plants are grown. So moving on, greenhouse effect now, right? So the glass allows what? The sun's energy to pass through it. So as you can see, the glass is transparent. So it is able to allow the sun's rays to pass through it, but does not allow the energy to get out again. Are we together? So the glass is there to what? To trap the energy inside. So the energy is trapped inside this glass house so that the plants have enough what? Warmth and have enough heat and light, right? So as a result, the air inside the greenhouse is warmer than the air outside it. And also, the greenhouse has a warming effect on the air, as I have said, right? So this glass is capable of keeping what? Warm air inside for the benefit of the plants. And also on Earth, now let's take it to Earth. On Earth, there is a natural greenhouse effect, right? There is a natural greenhouse effect. And this greenhouse effect is the one that warms the atmosphere sufficiently to sustain life. So in our previous lesson, as we were talking about the layers of the atmosphere, we also mentioned layers such as troposphere, stratosphere, and so on, right? We said that the stratosphere has the ozone layer which traps the sun's UV rays. And that ozone layer is there to sustain what? Heat. It's also there to protect us from extreme temperatures, right? So now, on Earth, there's this natural greenhouse effect, and it helps to warm the atmosphere sufficiently for us to be able to sustain life. So without this greenhouse effect, right, the atmosphere would be so cold that nothing could survive. By nothing, I mean all plants and animals wouldn't survive without the greenhouse effect. So it is important so that it sustains life by providing what? Necessary heat. So now, certain gases in the Earth's atmosphere are responsible for the greenhouse effect. What are those gases that I'm talking about here, right? First of all, those gases are known as greenhouse gases. They are responsible for keeping the Earth warm, right? They are responsible for keeping the atmosphere warm, right? So those gases are what? Carbon dioxide, water vapor, and methane, right? These are the most common greenhouse gases that enable what? This greenhouse effect to function well, right? They are carbon dioxide, water vapor, and methane. So they do this by doing what? By absorbing what? The heat. So now if you look at this picture here, it's a picture of the atmosphere. So meaning what? Remember our previous lesson, right? We said that the atmosphere is the layer of gases around Earth, right? Which is held by gravity. So now in the atmosphere, you will have a number of gases, including these greenhouse gases, right? Such as CO2, right? Water vapor as H2O, right? and also methane as CH4, right? These are the gases that are in the atmosphere and they help to trap what? The energy and sustain heat so that we are able to sustain life on Earth and avoiding what? The atmosphere being so cold that nothing survives on it. So now, looking at this, right? Let's look at how the greenhouse effect happens on Earth, right? So the greenhouse effect on Earth happens as follows, right? First of all, the energy from the sun passes through the atmosphere and warms what? The Earth's surface. So remember our previous lesson, right? We said that as the energy from the sun passes through the atmosphere, what happens? The ozone layer also traps what? Some of the UV rays and also sustains that heat, right? So the energy from the sun passes through the atmosphere and warms the surface of the earth. So what happens after that? The warmed earth radiates the energy back, right? It radiates the energy back into the atmosphere. So during insolation, right, during daylight, right, during insolation, the ozone layer in the atmosphere is able to trap the heat, right? Then at night, when the heat rises up during terrestrial radiation, the ozone layer again is able to trap that heat so that we sustain enough heat and we are able to sustain life. So the warmed earth radiates the energy back into the atmosphere. Then the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, they absorb most of this energy, right? They absorb most of this energy, warming the atmosphere closest to the Earth's surface. And without these greenhouse gases, most of the energy would pass out to space and the atmosphere would be much colder, right? So the gases of the atmosphere are similar to that gas we were talking about, right? The greenhouse. They are similar to the gas of the greenhouse because they trap energy, making the air warmer than it would otherwise be. So also, let's explain this in terms of pictures, right? Here is the Earth, right? Here is our planet Earth, right? As you can see around Earth, we find what? The layer of gases, which is the atmosphere, right? We find the atmosphere, which is the layer of gases around Earth. So as the sun or during insolation, right? As the sun hits the Earth's surface, what happens, right? It passes through what? The atmosphere, and the ozone layer is able to trap some of the UV rays from getting what? To the Earth, right? Then after that, also the warmed earth now gives back the energy to the atmosphere. As you can see, as it turns red here, it means now it has sustained what? The heat, right? So that it does not become extremely cold than expected or than required, right? Here's another picture as well for a clearer view, right? So here is the sun's UV rays, what? Entering what? The atmosphere. As you can see, this layer here, the white layer here, is our atmosphere as well, right? This is our atmosphere as well. So what happens now? The atmosphere absorbs what? Most of the UV rays. And now after doing that, also the air that it has warmth now, it gives back the warmth to the atmosphere. As you can see the arrows now of the heat bouncing back to the earth to sustain this heat, right? So that we do not experience what? Extremely cold temperatures and we are able to sustain life on earth. Right. I've talked too much now, right? Here's activity one to test yourself in terms of what I was talking about, right? Now, activity one, we have two questions. One has 1 mark and the other one has 3 marks. So I'm going to give you 4 minutes again, right? Firstly, let's go to the questions. Number one, it's saying define greenhouse effect. Then number two, explain how the greenhouse effect occurs, right? So now take 4 minutes. Let's meet again after 4 minutes. Welcome back again, grade 9s. We're still waiting for those questions, your comments on 079-578-2908. Now let's look at the solutions, right? Number 1 says define greenhouse effect. And the answer is it is a warming effect caused by the trapping of energy in the atmosphere, right? Don't forget to mark your work as you continue. Then number 2, explain how the greenhouse effect occurs. We said that firstly, right, the energy from the sun passes through the atmosphere and warms the surface of the earth. Then secondly, with the warmed earth, does what? It radiates the energy back into the atmosphere. And the gases do what? They trap this warm air, right? So the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere absorb most of its energy, warming the atmosphere closest to the Earth's surface. And we said that without the greenhouse gases, most of the energy would pass out to space and the atmosphere would be much colder. So let's just take a quick 2 minutes to write down the corrections. Welcome back again, grade 9 learners. Now let's move on with this sheep, right? So now, global warming, right? We cannot talk about greenhouse effect and divorce it from global warming, right? So what is this global warming that I'm talking about here, right? So the greenhouse gases, they help to warm the atmosphere. Let's start there. That's why these two are linked, right? The greenhouse gases, they help to warm the atmosphere. So now, as you can see here, right, as we said that the sun's UV rays, they travel and pass through the atmosphere. Then the earth also bounces back their energy, which is again trapped in the atmosphere, sustaining what? Heat, right? Sustaining heat and warmth, right? So now, these greenhouse gases, they help to warm the atmosphere. And also, if the amount of these gases in the atmosphere increases, so does the amount of warming will increase and lead to what? To an increase in temperatures. And that increase in temperatures, we call it what? Global warming, right? It is the increase in the average temperatures of the atmosphere. That's why these two are linked. In as much as greenhouse effect is conducive for sustaining life on Earth, right? But it can also lead to global warming. So let's discuss more of this global warming, right? So now, for the last 150 years or so, right, the average annual temperature of the Earth has risen, right? And scientists believe that global warming is caused by the increased amount of greenhouse gases, right? And also, one of the greenhouse gases that we have mentioned there is carbon dioxide, which is released into the atmosphere by natural processes and also by what? By the burning of fossil fuels, right? So it is also released by the burning of fossil fuels like coal and oil in people's homes, in factories, industries, and also to generate electricity. So now, if you remember our lessons from term 2, right? We talked of what? Of chemical reactions. And we also talked of the reaction of carbon with oxygen, right? Let's revisit that topic, right? So that we understand how carbon dioxide is a factor to, or a contributing factor to global warming, right? So now, coal, right? Coal is a form of carbon and it is used as a source of fuel for many different purposes. You're having a bright home, you use coal, right? To generate electricity, we use coal, for example, right? So it is used for many different purposes and it is a source of fuel and it is a form of carbon. Are we together? But also, with that being said, right, it is also causing air pollution. It causes air pollution and other environmental problems such as what? Such as global warming, right? It is one of the primary fossil fuels that humans use to generate electricity, used to for drying, used as a source of what? Heat, right? So now, how does it come about to produce this carbon dioxide? Remember this chemical reaction, right? As we said that coal is a form of carbon. So it is carbon reacting with the oxygen in the air to form what? Carbon dioxide as a product. So carbon dioxide, as we have said, is one of the examples of the greenhouse gases. So as you burn more coal, you are producing what? More carbon dioxide, which can lead to what? To global warming, right? Or it can lead to a highly increase of what? A high increase of global temperatures. So now, methane also is one of the contributing factors of global warming. It is a gas released by animals when they digest their food, right? So remember, during digestion, there are many processes involved, right? Chemical digestion, mechanical absorption, reabsorption, and also excretion, right? So excretion, to be exact, is one of the is the part where animals contribute to global warming, right? So scientists believe that as the number of people on Earth has increased, as well as the number of or the amount of fossil fuels burnt and the number of animals reared for food has also increased, right? So they believe that these increases they lead to global warming, as I've said, right? So now here is one animal, right? A cow. So during digestion, right, a cow digests food and also excretes, right? So during excretion, it secretes what? A gas or excretes a gas which is called what? Methane. And methane is one of the greenhouse gases that also contribute to global warming. So imagine in a case like this one, right? You have many cows at one place. So there's a lot of digestion and a lot of what? Of emission of methane gas. So it is highly concentrated in this place and also it is absorbed by the atmosphere, which later contributes to what? To global warming and climate change, right? So now, this global warming, as we can see, as we talk about it, we start to see that it is potentially life-threatening, right? It is a potentially life-threatening problem on Earth. But how, right? Because it leads to other factors such as climate change. Not only climate change, rising sea levels. Not only rising sea levels, food shortage, right? And also what? Mass extinctions. So let's discuss these factors that are brought by global warming, right? First of all, climate change, right? How does climate change affect or climate change? How does global warming bring about climate change? So scientists believe that global warming is causing the climate patterns to change, right? So it is predicted that some places that are now mild and wet will become hotter and drier than deserts are expected to expand, right? They're expected to grow because of this global warming that starts from what? From the emission of greenhouse gases. And also, thunderstorms and tropical cyclones will become more severe as time goes by, right? This is because of global warming. So we have severe thunders and more of tropical cyclones because of this certain issue, which is global warming. And we said that global warming also leads to the rising in sea levels, right? So the increased temperatures cause the polar ice caps and glaciers to melt in high mountains, right? As they melt, they increase what? They increase the waters in the oceans. So this causes the sea levels to rise at about 3 millimeters per year, right? And if that happens, if temperatures continue to rise, right, many low-lying parts of the world would have serious floods each year, right? And some could remain permanently underwater. So here's an example of what? Of a picture of a flooded place, right? Now, here's another picture that most of us or some of us have seen before, right? The floods in our country and specifically where? In KZN, right? So now let's look at this scenario about the floods in KZN, right? It says that welcome back again, grade 9 learners. Apologies for the glitches, right? So now we're here, right? We're saying that global warming is a factor that also leads to food shortages, right? And we said that climate change and rising sea levels affect agriculture, right? This is because it ruins the soil that the crops are being planted, right? So crops that are pleasantly grown in one place may no longer be able to grow there because of changed climatic conditions or flooded land. And also, we know that already there are food shortages on Earth, right? So if crop production decreases, many people will face food shortages and hunger. Now, we also said that global warming leads to what? To mass extinctions. And what did we say mass extinction is? We said it was what? Is the dying out of a certain species over long periods of time. So the Earth's ecosystems are a delicate balance between living and non-living parts of an environment, right? So what happens here? When climate changes, these delicate balances are disrupted and plants and animals find it difficult to survive. And already, in some mountainous regions, animals like foxes and butterflies have moved to higher slopes where it is cooler, right? So, however, a move is not possible for all species and they risk extinction. So now, if we're to encounter what? a natural disaster, such as this one, global warming. Now think of animals such as elephants, right? How long will it take them to move to another region, right? So they risk what? Extinction, because they will be affected at large and it will take time for them to move to a safer region. So if one or more species become extinct in a short period of time, decreasing the Earth's biodiversity dramatically, we say there has been what? A mass extinction. So now, let's come up with solutions, right? Let's stop talking about problems only. How can we reduce global warming, right? How can we reduce global warming? The first point then, plant more trees, afforestation, right? Plant more trees. Now, my question to you now is, why do we need to plant more trees so that we avoid global warming? Remember, trees, right? Trees, they photosynthesize. They are plants, right? They photosynthesize. They rely on carbon dioxide to make their own food. So now, the more the carbon dioxide is emitted, the more, if we have more trees, the more these trees are going to absorb the carbon dioxide for manufacturing their own food. So it gives what? It gives the atmosphere less carbon dioxide than usual, right? And also, the second point, use public transport. Why do I say that? Now, imagine if all of us have cars. And imagine all the gases that are emitted by cars, right? It would lead to global warming in a quick space of time. So if we all use public transport, it means less cars on the road and less cars emitting these greenhouse gases. And also, we can use renewable materials. We can recycle. And not only that, if we stop littering, right? So that we stop or reduce what? The emission of these greenhouse gases, being carbon dioxide, methane, and water vapor, right? So now, activity two, right? Activity two has two questions, one with one mark and the other one with 3 marks, right? I would like you to take 4 minutes again to copy down and write the answers, right? But before, let's read through. Number one is saying define global warming. Number two, list 3 reasons why global warming is a potentially life-threatening problem on Earth. Let's meet again after 4 minutes. Welcome back again, grade 9 learners. So now, let's look at the solutions, right? Number one is saying define global warming. And we define global warming as an increase in the average temperatures of the atmosphere. Then list 3 reasons why global warming is a potentially life-threatening problem on Earth, right? This is because it leads to climate change, it leads to rise in sea levels, and also it leads to food shortages, and also it leads to mass extinctions. So any of the 3 that you might have written them, mark correct, and also take a quick minute to copy down the corrections. Welcome back again. Now remember, I said that we have our WhatsApp interactive number, right? Which is 079 578 2908. So now let me just give you a chance to ask any question, to comment on this lesson just for 3 minutes, right? Just take 3 minutes to answer any question related to this topic. Welcome back again. Now it seems like we do not have any questions from our WhatsApp line, right? So now let's summarize what we have learned for today. So today we're talking about the greenhouse effect, right? And we said that a greenhouse is a structure which is made up of gas in which plants are grown. And that greenhouse helps to sustain heat, right? It helps to it helps the plants to grow well, right? And also, we said that the greenhouse effect on Earth happens as follows. We said that the energy from the sun passes through the atmosphere and warms the surface of the Earth. Then after that, the warmed Earth radiates the energy back into the atmosphere. When it radiates the energy back into the atmosphere, the gases in the atmosphere or the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, they absorb most of this energy, right? Warming what? The Earth's surface. And remember that without these greenhouse gases, most of the energy would just pass out to space and the atmosphere would be much colder. So we said that the gases of the atmosphere are similar to that gas, right? The greenhouse, right? They are similar to the gas of the greenhouse because they trap energy, making the air warmer than it would otherwise be. So we also gave you this picture, right? To say that we receive the sun's UV rays here, then the sun's UV rays, they pass the atmosphere and hit what? The Earth's surface here, right? They hit the Earth's surface. Then after that, the radiated energy, it is bouncing back to what? To the atmosphere again. As it bounces back to the atmosphere, the gases of the atmosphere, they absorb this energy and keep the atmosphere warm, right? We also talked about the fact that greenhouse gases help to warm the atmosphere. And they help to warm the atmosphere, and if the amount of these gases rises, so as the what? The temperature will rise. So if the amount of these gases in the atmosphere increases, so does the warming of, so does the amount of warming, right? Leading to an increase in temperatures globally. And we said that the increase in temperatures globally is called global warming. We also talked of what ways to reduce global warming. Besides that, right, we said that global warming is a contributing factor to other natural disasters, right? And also rising in sea levels, climate change, food shortages, and also mass extinctions, right? So ways to reduce global warming. We said that they include planting more trees. Because of what? When you plant more trees, the trees absorb the abundant what? Carbon dioxide for photosynthesis and leaving the atmosphere with less carbon dioxide. That is enough also to sustain heat and also not too much to cause global warming. We said that use public transport as well, because now the lesser the cars on the road, the lesser the greenhouse emission or greenhouse gas is what? Emission on the atmosphere. And as well, we said that use renewable materials or recyclable materials. And we said that stop littering, right? So as to avoid the increase in global warming. So in our next lesson, we'll be talking about the topic of the birth of a star, right? We'll indulge more in this topic. So as usual, go home, learn more about this topic so that when I come back again, it's easy to understand and comprehend, right? So from me to you now, thank you and goodbye. As you can see that the floods are coming, right? It's time to run.